Transistors are one of the building blocks for all electronics. They're the on and off switch and the amplifier. So scientists at UCLA have developed a new kind of transistor that, instead of controlling the flow of electricity, controls the flow of heat. They're calling it a thermal transistor, and it could have more uses than just keeping computers cool. When regular transistors were first invented...
So since basically the thermoelectric generators are backwards compatible with PC hardware, well, after I figured out what the pyramids were, it led me to this. You basically take the heat and you transist it back into the system using thermoelectric transistors or thermoelectric generators. The pyramids are literally giant transistors. You have your CPU here, which is a giant single, it's just a bipolar junction transistor with a radioisotope thermoelectric transistor inside of it, which is the Ark of the Covenant, and it has an open arc. This would be the North Bridge, and this would be the South Bridge processors on a motherboard. So you have your CPU, your North Bridge, and your South Bridge processors. You have your CPU, your North Bridge, and your South Bridge. All of this transistor material is backwards compatible with thermoelectric generators. And the UFO that Bob Lazar talks about used perfect thermoelectric generators. It was a near perfect thermoelectric generator. It takes whatever heat and transits it into the energy, and it doesn't waste anything. And notice thermoelectric generator. This is the path that the ancients took. They took heat to transist it into electricity, whereas we take electricity and it creates heat as a byproduct, and we just try to sweep it out, which is a waste. See, Stonehenge, I guarantee this is a giant, it's just a giant thermoelectric generator. But it's decayed, so, a lot. But it's still got a lot of the crystalline material there. The Karnak stones, whatever they are, they emit energy. There's a resonance here, so whatever they are, whatever they were doing, was using solid-state physics. And the CPU is millions of transistors on a micro scale. This is just one heterojunction bipolar transistor, or thermoelectric transistor on a large scale. See, the Ark of the Covenant was a radioisotope thermoelectric generator. And it had an open arc, a positive and negative. But the open arc was on the top here where the heat source is. So the open arc itself would help heat it, while the bottom was in the sarcophagus that absorbed the heat. And the manna was radium, which caused people to have radiation sickness, and it glowed. And Aaron's rods were contained in the Ark of the Covenant. We use nuclear rods in our reactors. This would be the King's Chamber with the Ark of the Covenant in there with the open spark, or arc, or spark gap, because it's actually set up like a Tesla coil and a radio, because it's a transmitter and a receiver of energy, but it's also a nuclear power plant. It's also a gas discharge lamp, a thermoelectric generator, a radioisotope thermoelectric generator, a transistor. It's all of our things that we've diverged, all combined into one overlaid system. And this P-type, N-type material was 369, and there was gold. 3 is lithium, lithium-ion batteries. We'd use lithium for a P-type. Carbon we use for insulation, and an N-type we would use fluorite or fluorine crystal, because fluorine is the most electronegative element on the periodic table. So the Ark of the Covenant is in the nuclear room here with radium, because it's more nuclear than uranium. It's transisting the the energy into the casing. You have your cold queen's chamber, which is still relatively hot, but here's your hot alpha, your cold queens, beta, and they're coupled together with the transistor material of the casing itself, which is doped properly. This would be analogous to the Grand Gallery, which is the heat exchanger. This whole room here, actually steam was actually used here too. It was condensed in the antechamber and then reinflated here. The energy is condensed as nuclear radium, radiate, raw, sun god. And it was condensed, it was inflated through the casing and transmitted to the capstone, which distributed about 1.21 gigawatts of energy, literally. That's no joke. 88 in a capacitor, a thermoelectric capacitor. A nuclear power plant produces 1 gigawatt. So the pyramid uses a giant thermoelectric transistor to create wireless energy, the same kind that we would use, but it uses the heat and transits it and creates electricity. Similar to how we use our nuclear power plants, and we get the same amount of energy as they did, but we use wires and they used wireless. So you can take Peltier modules and put these on your heatsink, and you can use that to absorb and transist that energy back into the system. Of course, you still need your cooler, but you can use a liquid or whatever. The potential difference between the hot and cold is what you want.